June 25, 1972, Sydney. A journalist sits down and types a headline. 4 words. 4 words that killed Australia's muscle car industry. By the end of that week, Ford had buried the most important car they ever built, and they denied it ever existed. To understand what happened in June of 1972, you have to go back 1 year. The 1971 Hardy-Ferodo 500 at Bathurst, the race that matters most in Australian motorsport. The front rows of the starting grid looked like a Ford dealership. Nearly every car in the top 10 was a Ford Falcon XY GTHO Phase 3. Allan Moffat took the win outright. The 3 cars across the line all wore blue oval badges. Ford had built something that was better than everything else on the planet, and any Australian could walk into a dealership and buy one for $5,250. Here's the thing. The GTHO did not look like a race car to the person on the street. It was a 4-door family sedan. It had a back seat, a boot, and a shaker hood scoop that trembled with every idle stroke of the engine. Ford listed the engine at 300 horsepower. That number was a lie, a deliberate, calculated lie. Ford understated the output to keep the insurance companies quiet. On the Hume Highway, Wheels magazine recorded a top speed of 141 miles per hour in 1971 in a car that carried a spare tire in the boot. Ford did not stumble into building this car. They built it on purpose for one specific reason. The Bathurst race had a rule. If you wanted to compete, you had to sell at least 200 road-going versions of the car to the public first. That rule is called homologation, and Ford used it as a weapon. The GTHO program started in 1969 with the Phase 1. Each generation got more serious. The Phase 3 was the version that was never really supposed to be road legal at all. The HO in the name officially stood for handling option, stiffer springs, thicker front anti-roll bar, a heavier-duty 4-speed gearbox, a bigger radiator because the engine ran hot. For an extra $250, Ford would hand-assemble your engine to race tolerances. They called it the quality control build. About 20 of those engines were fitted to road cars. 7 of the top 10 finishers at Bathurst in 1971 had one. Allan Moffat drove the winning car, Canadian-born, American-trained, racing in Australia. The crowd tolerated him because he kept winning in a Ford. That 1971 season was the high watermark. Ford's racing program was winning everything, and the Phase 3 in the showrooms was essentially the same car. So Ford made a decision. They were going to build something even better. The XA Falcon was the next generation body, wider track, better handling platform. Ford started work on the GTHO Phase 4. 200 units were planned for production, improved brakes, wider tires on bigger alloy wheels. The engine development focused less on outright power and more on drivability. People who drove the prototypes said it stopped and handled better than anything on Australian roads. 4 cars were fully built. 3 were race prepped for the 1972 Bathurst 500. 1 was a completed road car prototype. And then, Evan Green sat down to his typewriter. June 25, 1972, Sydney. The headline? 160 miles per hour supercars, soon. The article was accurate. Ford was building a car that would do 160 miles per hour. So was Holden. So was Chrysler. All 3 manufacturers were deep into their next generation homologation specials. The article quoted Milton Morris, the New South Wales Minister of Transport. Morris called the cars bullets on wheels. He said he was appalled that ordinary Australians could buy one. Within days, the political pressure was real. Morris threatened to ban the cars from public roads entirely. Ford panicked. Their marketing manager, N.D. Shriver, sent letters to every Ford dealer in Australia. The letter stated there had never been, was not now, and never would be a Phase 4 during the life of the XA Falcon model. This letter was sent while 4 completed Phase 4 cars were sitting in Ford's own workshop. This letter was sent while dealerships had already received internal bulletins about the Phase 4's production run. Ford did not just kill the car, they denied it had ever existed. Here is the part that stings. The Phase 4 was, by every account, safer than the Phase 3. Better brakes, more grip, more predictable at the limit. Milton Morris had no idea what he was killing. He was reacting to a number, 160 miles per hour, a number in a newspaper. The 4 Phase 4 cars that were built did not get destroyed. Ford quietly sold them off. They ended up with private collectors and racing teams. One of those cars sold in 2018 for $2 million. A Phase 3 in clean condition brought $1.15 million at auction in 2021. The car Ford built for $5,250, the car the government called a public menace. Meanwhile, Chrysler, the one manufacturer that didn't pull its homologation special, went ahead with the valiant Charger E49, competed at Bathurst anyway. Ford handed them an open lane. 300 Phase 3s were built between May and November of 1971. About 100 are believed to survive today. Every surviving example still carries that original listed price stamped into the build plate: $5,250. The fastest 4-door production car on Earth in 1971 cost less than a new Holden Kingswood. A newspaper article ended it, and a politician who never drove one decided the public couldn't be trusted with it. Australian muscle car production never recovered from the supercar scare. Ford kept building Falcons, Holden kept building Commodores, but the homologation specials, the cars built specifically to win Bathurst, were gone. The supercar scare lasted about 6 months as a political issue. Then the politicians moved on. The threat of legislation was never made into law. That is the part nobody talks about. The cars were never formally banned. There was no legislation, no official order. Ford killed the Phase 4 because they were scared of a newspaper headline in a politician's quote. The irony. The Phase 4 was safer than the Phase 3. The car Milton called a bullet on wheels would have been the most controllable, best-stopping high-performance car Australia had ever produced. Somewhere in Australia right now, one of those 4 Phase 4 cars sits in a climate-controlled garage, worth somewhere north of $2 million. 4,698 miles on the odometer. Original paint.